Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully, it is not your first webinar with us. We've got a great new topic today. If it is your first webinar with us, let me go through kind of the rules of the road before we get started. First of all, since we're in webinar mode, we cannot see you or hear you, but we know you're out there. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. We do love hearing from you, and we will get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. But the chat box is really the easiest way for me to see those questions and let our speaker know that we've got some questions for him. I also want to let you know that we record all of our webinars and they all live on our YouTube channel. But as long as you're registered for the webinar, we will email you a link to the recording and we will email you the slides. So if there are any links throughout the slide presentation, they will be clickable when you receive them later on today. We should be here for about an hour. I know it's lunchtime. Like we said, we can't hear you or see you, so go ahead and enjoy your lunch. I hope you have a snack and a drink, something like that. If you see me chewing, no, you didn't. I've got my lean cuisine pizza here, and I'm going to enjoy it. But Scott is going to talk to us today about wearable technology. And I know that this is so important. It's such a great topic. I'm excited to see what he has to say about that. Before he gets started, let me introduce myself real quick. I am Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. We have been in the financial services industry for about 30 years now. We're located just outside of Houston in Sugar Land, Texas, but we serve families all across Texas and all across the United States. Now that, we can work over the internet, we do almost everything on Zoom, and that's been super helpful for us. We focus on serving families who have a loved one or an individual in their life who has some kind of intellectual or developmental disability. We are fully licensed in life insurance and securities, investments, all of that kind of stuff. We are also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors as well. The reason we do what we do is because the founder, the owner of our company, has two special needs kids. And when they were going through their teenage years and she saw how difficult this all was, she said to herself, I really want to help other people have an easier time of this than what I had. So that's what we aim to do. When we talk about special needs planning, we're talking about protection plans for your family. What happens if all of a sudden you can't work tomorrow and you can't earn that income that your family relies on? We talk about lifetime care for your loved one. What if they need full-time residential care in the future? That obviously can be quite expensive. And how on earth do people pay for that? We help you understand what happens when they come out of high school and now they're ready to enter the real world. When they turn 18, there's a lot of rules that change. So we help with transition planning. We set up ABLE accounts, we set up investments, we sell life insurance, we do all of those things. But mainly we are here to educate you, the family, and to advocate for you. There are over 263,000 financial advisors across the United States. And out of those 263,000 financial advisors, only about 200 or less focus on special needs planning. That's fewer than 0.1% of all the financial advisors in the United States that focus on special needs planning. So when you're talking to us, you are truly working with experts in the field and you are in the right place. And it's so important that you have those experts as part of your team. So one thing that I want to talk about just a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Scott. When we're talking about special needs planning, I know that it keeps you awake at night. You're thinking about who is going to take care of my child when I can't do it anymore. What happens when you're not here? There are a lot of great programs available. And the answer is that the time to plan is right now. It doesn't matter what you have not done in the past. We're not gonna, fault you for that or put you in detention or timeout or anything like that. We want to start from now and look to the future. You have a lot more time to make a bigger impact the earlier you get started. We also want you to think about what happens after high school. You don't necessarily want your child just to graduate to the couch. So think about vocational options that come after high school, educational options. There are plenty of residential options, whether it be partial care or full care. And you should start taking a look at those things early. There can be wait lists. And, when the time is right, you find the right spot, we would hate for you to then learn that they have a long wait. So tour those residential communities early and get a feel for what might be right for your loved one. And make careful considerations before you just say, a sibling is going to take care of my loved one. Well, maybe they say they're up for it, and maybe they say they have a super loving relationship right now and everything looks like this would be a great fit. But who knows what's going to happen in 20, 30, 40 years from now when you're gone. Maybe the sibling who is going to be in charge, all of a sudden they've got their own life and their own kids and their career and their relationships. And now they might see their sibling as a burden or an obligation. And you certainly don't want that. And from the other side of this perspective, your loved one who has some kind of a special need or a disability, they've had this relationship with their loving sister or brother for so long, and now sister or brother is going to try to step up and act like parent. There could be a little bit of resentment there from that change in their dynamic. So just be careful when you think about those things and when you're planning that. And if you ever need help, of course, we are here for you. So today we have got Scott Carpenter. I am so excited, like I said, to hear about this topic. We're going to talk about BoundaryCare. Again, put your questions and comments in the chat. You'll get this recording later on today. I'm going to enjoy my pizza. And Scott, thank you for taking over for me.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Hi to everybody. And I have to say, I'm just sort of moved by the comments that Michelle opened with. I know personally how difficult it is to be caring for a loved one with special needs and how difficult it can be to hand off various responsibilities. And that is, in fact, one of the reasons why I'm one of the co-founders of BoundaryCare myself. So just to give you a little bit of background, BoundaryCare is a company that specializes in what we call assistive technology. So technology that is there to help support the health and safety and wellness of individuals with various needs. We are located in the Twin Cities, so just I think about maybe 16 hours north of Houston if you get over onto 35W. Um, it's a straight shot. But I'm here today to talk to you about wearable technology in general, and then in particular to tell you about the technology, the wearable technology that I know best, which is the company that I'm involved in, as just an example of some of the things that are out there that I think will be able to help to support the loved ones that you're caring for.
As a
Um,
matter of fact, Scott, my dad lives in Minnesota, so I'm
there
familiar
you
with the
go.
area.
Already a connection. That's
There
good.
we go.
Just to give you a brief overview of what this means, I mean, wearable technology is not a very well-known kind of sector within technology. And a lot of the technologies that we're using to help to care for loved ones with various needs are not wearable, right? They have to do with kind of larger pieces of equipment that may be more stationary, are probably in the home. And they have some great features and some great uses, but they have some limitations as well. One of them being that they are not portable typically, and they have no contact with the body. So there are limits to what other technologies are able to do. So the great advantage of wearable technology is that it tends to be less obtrusive. It just becomes sort of like a garment that you might be wearing. It's a piece of clothing, it's a piece of jewelry, it's a pendant. These things that tend to be relatively well accepted as non-stigmatizing artifacts of everyday life.
Mm,
And you see some of the examples of wearable technology here on this slide. And I'll just kind of move from left to right on the top. The famous life alert, right? So I've fallen, I can't get up. So you press the button and help arrives. That's what we consider to be a point solution device. It does one thing, and it can do it relatively well. So somebody falls and you're able to get the alert, which is can be a very useful thing. Next to it, attached to the sneaker, is another kind of wearable that's called a clippable. So it just clips onto existing clothing. It's a geobit device, which is used for GPS locations. So if you're worried about tracking an individual, and this is often for children who might be, maybe one is worried about stranger danger, or you're worried about kids just getting lost, that sort of thing. Can also be for older people who are subject to wandering. A clippable, like a geobit device, can be really useful. Then to the side of that, to the right, is a Garmin watch. The Garmin really specializes in health. So what it's doing is it's collecting all sorts of information about activity levels and heart rate and heart rhythm, how much you've exercised. It can give you, depending on the watch, certain bits of information about your oxygen level. So a really useful device that can do multiple things. So you can already see a kind of an evolution here, that from the life alert that just really does one thing, kind of a single point solution, we're starting to look at some devices that can do multiple things. And this is one of the great evolutions in technology now, that in a very small device, we can start to concentrate the number of features that are embedded within it. Down below, again to the left, is the Angel Sense device. Here you see the clippable. There's also a watch version. It's mostly used, again, for GPS locations. The watch can also do telecommunications so that you can call an individual. That can be a useful tool, right? If you're just trying to locate someone and then maybe make sure that they're all right. Then in the middle, what we have is the Empatica bracelet, which can be used for some forms of seizure detection. So it's able to pick up rapid muscle motion, which can be very useful for detecting tonic-clonic seizure. So not what are called absent seizures, but present convulsive seizures. And then just like clipped onto this earlobe, this tiny little device, it's an OxyWear oxygen saturation monitor, which is a very sensitive oxygen saturation monitor. It can tell what your O2 level is. It's checking almost constantly, and it's a very precise measurement. This one is a kind of a point solution. It just does one thing, but it does it very, very well. And again, it's very unobtrusive. So I'm focusing a little bit on the unobtrusiveness of these things. I see a message that just showed up in the chat, somebody asking about the name.
mhm.
So I'm not sure which device that was for, but the
Probably the
bracelet.
ear thing.
Yeah, so that's OxyWear. OxyWear, OXIWEAR. So wear as in wearable. Um, And they're able to do a number of things, and they can do so relatively unobtrusively. So the big problem, so lots of great advantages with wearables, but a couple of challenges, right? So because it's a wearable, it's not like plugged in all of the time. Devices have to get charged occasionally. And then sometimes they are unobtrusive, and sometimes they're a little less so. So I would look at the very first item here, the life alert, the pendant, which is sort of famous in the industry for doing a good job at what it does, but also it's typically hard to get people to wear the devices just because having a big pendant like that brands people as vulnerable. And the single greatest reason for people not wearing some sort of assistive technology is that they find it stigmatizing. So there's always this balance between what it is that people find congenial to wear, it's unobtrusive, and the kind of power that it packs and the kinds of things that it can do. So here you've got this little assortment of devices that are out there that are doing a number of things and typically doing them actually pretty well. And then if we can move to the next slide, I'll just tell you a little bit about BoundaryCare. So this is the company that I'm involved with. And what I want to do is just give you a little overview of how it works. What we're doing is working with a consumer product, what looks like a consumer product. So for those of you who are maybe a little you've got some background in tech and you look at this device, you might recognize it. It's an Apple Watch. So we're working with an Apple Watch, which we have stripped down. We've taken a bunch of things off of it. We've put our own software on it. We're using a bunch of sensors that are embedded within the watch. And the Apple Watch is like this really incredible resource. And it's backed by a $3 trillion company embedded with all sorts of very sensitive sensors. And it's a very well-known consumer product. So the great advantage of the Apple Watch is a couple of great advantages. I mean, one is just what it can do technically, but most of all, it just looks like a fashion accessory. So people are typically happy to wear it. So it's a little bit more like the Oxy wear that you saw on the other slide, very small, unobtrusive device, or maybe a little clippable that's not very obtrusive. This actually is a positive accessory. Many people are happy to wear it. And then what we're able to do is we're able to gather information off of the watch, and then we are able to make that information available to caregivers. This is something the Apple Watch doesn't do natively. It's something that we have added. But we're able to gather that information and transmit it in a very prompt way so that the data is actionable. And I'll show you in the next slide a little bit how this works, just giving you an overview. So what you see here is the watch at the far left. So your loved one wears a watch. That's really the last action they need to take. I mean, we provide some coaching. We send reminders to caregivers and to the individual wearing the watch when it's time to recharge the watch and things like that. But otherwise, they put on the watch and they're good to go. They can look at the time. There are a couple of things that they can do on the watch, but mostly we're just using it for BoundaryCare. While they're wearing it, we harvest all sorts of data from the watch, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. We're just able to collect these things passively, and then the data is sent up to our cloud server, and there we try to parse the data, try to figure out what's important, what's not, what is critical or urgent, and what is not, and then we send that information in various directions. So there are some occasions where we can send information back to the person wearing the watch, a kind of a biofeedback mechanism, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We send the information to a handheld device, so that could be an iPhone, an Android phone, an Android tablet, or an iPad. So once we have the information off, this is no longer tied to Apple. We can be multi-platform with the way that we deliver the information. And so that dashboard on the handheld gives you the opportunity to view all sorts of information in real time. How is this person doing? What is their location? Other data metrics that I'll show you in a moment. And then we can also send alerts to it. And in any case, all of the data is sent to our web portal, which is sort of the command center for BoundaryCare. And that's where all of the data is collected. You can look at histories of the data. You can send reminders, you can set up the way in which you want alerts to be served. And because we have the whole history of all of the data that we've collected, you can also look at trends in the data. So there's some trend analysis. Is this particular metric improving, or is it degrading? Is there a problem that really needs to be addressed? So we can look at a bunch of different things. And in particular, we're focused on these 4 different use cases. There are some things that overlap here, and there are some things that fall outside of this. But for the most part, we're able to do really excellent fall protection. So we don't consider it just fall detection, which we can do quite well. Somebody falls, we can send an alert. You can call them directly on the watch. They can call from the watch. It's really very transparent in the way that that operates. But we can also look at contributing factors to the fall. So it's great to detect a fall, but it would be even better if you could prevent it. So the question is, why did somebody fall? And so some of the trend analysis that you can do looking at things like heart rate and oxygen saturation levels can help you to look at that. And I'll give you a clearer example in just a moment. Elopement or wandering, that can be a great concern, or even abduction, right? So where is the person gone? The Apple Watch natively offers really powerful GPS tracking using GPS, sort of a combination of GPS and cell towers and Wi-Fi networks, and it's able to do a great job of locating people. We offer geofencing so that you can draw a perimeter around the location where the individual lives. So it could be around the home, or it could be around a workplace or a school. And if they go outside of that perimeter, then an alert is sounded. We also offer safe itineraries. So if it's okay for the person to be at home, and it's also okay for them to go around the block or down to the park. So you can just trace an itinerary, and all of a sudden that becomes a safe itinerary. And as long as they don't stray too far from that, then no alert is sounded. Things like speed monitoring. So if you have individuals who should not get into a motorized vehicle, that is for whatever reason alarming, we can alert for that. And then of course being able to call the person on the watch directly. Then we can manage a host of complex health situations, including things like seizures. So seizures, for those of you who are familiar with this, seizures manifest themselves in many different ways. No 2 people have exactly the same kind of seizure. BoundaryCare doesn't have electrodes attached to the scalp. We're not looking at brain waves, but we're able to look at many of the proxies for seizures. So typically when a seizure occurs of any sort, the heart rate goes up. This is often because breathing slows or even stops, and then the heart is racing to try to catch up with it. Then because if people are standing and suddenly they have a seizure, and especially if it's convulsive, they may suffer a fall. So the fall detection is useful. We're now collecting rapid muscle motion, and next month we expect to release our version of the kit that includes an alert for muscle motion that is typical of a tonic-clonic seizure. And then we can look at a bunch of other things that may be contributing factors to seizures, things like sleep quality or activity levels and other items. And then finally, this sort of broad behavioral category where we can deliver many different reminders and nudges, behavioral nudges to coax people through their day, remind them to do this or that. Don't forget to have your breakfast. Don't forget to feed the cat. Don't forget to do your homework, whatever you would like, right? A number of those that can be set up in various ways, including a de-escalation protocol for individuals who are subject to outbursts. Sort of overwhelming anger. The agitation also has, the body speaks in that particular case. So we can measure some of those physical attributes, and then we can alert sometimes the individual directly, or caregivers who might want to be able to intervene. So what we see here is a variety of different cases. And as I mentioned at the beginning, just speaking about wearables in general, there is this general evolution toward single point solutions. Life Alert does one thing really well. You fall, you press a button, and the alert is sounded. to devices that are really able to look at many different use cases and help to solve many different many different problems. So the Garmin is doing a great job of that, and Fitbit can do a few of those things as well. And then we're trying to operate in that space as best we can. If we move on to the next slide, this is just a list of some of the things that we can look at. It's actually not a total list because the total list is just too long, but a bunch of different metrics that we can pick up on. So in addition to the use cases that we're looking at, there are a fair number of users who are doing kind of a do-it-yourself version of, right? They don't fall neatly into one of those categories, or maybe they have a couple of those things going on that they want to monitor for. And because we can turn on and off features as a user would like, the users can also do some of this, but we're often helping them to set up their configuration. They can choose which features to turn on. They can determine what the threshold should be. So if they want to receive a heart rate alert, at what heart rate do you want to receive it? High heart rate, low heart rate is different for different people. Low O2 is different for different people. So it can really be personalized for the needs of a given individual. I would just point to the bottom here, on the bottom right, where we see activity levels and daily energy burn. So sort of general health and wellness things, but also usage tracking. So making sure that you know if people are really wearing the device. That is crucial to being able to understand whether or not the device is being effective in its use. So
That is
we
so
do send.
true. I find that I end up charging my Fitbit for a week.
Oh yeah, right. So we do that. I mean, we alert people when it's time to put the device on the charger, and we also alert them when it's time to take it off the charger. And we can alert caregivers if it's supposed to come off at 9 o'clock or something. And it's like, wait a minute, it's noon and the device is still on the charger. We
Mhm.
sort of ding the caregivers and let them know so that they can intervene. So all this kind of coaching to help make sure that the device is really being used.
Fantastic.
Um, so I've mentioned a couple of times alerting. So these tools are really only so useful as the information that they collect, and that information is only so useful as it is when the individuals receive it. So who is receiving the information? So getting the information to the right person at the right time is a critical part of this, and it's one of the places we've invested pretty heavily on the tech side. So if there is an incident, somebody goes outside of a safe zone, somebody has a fall, somebody is in a vehicle and it goes over, we recognize that suddenly they're traveling at 30 miles an hour, they're no longer on foot. The heart rate goes too high or the O2 goes too low, we send an alert. And the alert can go to many people all at once, a kind of a broadcast alert. That broadcast alert can also be scheduled so that different people would receive the alert during different times of day. If it's in a family situation, maybe you have certain people who are receiving alerts during the week and others who are sort of on duty during the weekend. These things get passed around a little bit. We can also do what's called a waterfall alert. So it goes first to one person. And if that person doesn't respond for whatever reason, maybe their phone is off, maybe they're just unavailable, it'll go to the next person and the next person so that no critical alert ever goes unanswered. There are occasions where it's useful to send feedback to the individual wearing the watch. I mentioned this with the de-escalation protocol. So somebody who is subject to agitation, if we're able to see that their heart rate is rising, maybe there's also in that situation some rapid muscle motion, some repetitive actions. We can send an alert to caregivers, but we can also send an alert back to the individual, encouraging them to calm down, do their deep breathing, do whatever exercises they've been encouraged to do, or go to their quiet place, so they can become a little bit more independent with that. And then there are just ways of reaching out directly. So that creation of reminders and nudges, that's one of the forms of outreach that you can do from a caregiver to the individual. But as I've mentioned, it's possible also to call the watch directly. And if you have somebody who is not really adept at pressing small buttons on the watch to like pick up a call, we can set it to auto answer. And after a couple of seconds, the call just picks up and you can start speaking in this sort of magical way of talking almost face to face through a watch.
Well, and since, you can call back and forth with the watch, but I'm sure that you can also set it to be a little bit more discreet in some cases and just a little buzz if you have more concerns about, you know, being an outcast, that sort of thing, being
Yeah.
stigmatized.
That's right. So for notifications that go to the watch, they can be set just to do a little vibration to the watch. So there's no real interruption, for example. It's just a little kind of a nudge to the individual. And if they look down, oh yeah, they get that little reminder showing up on the face of the watch. And these nudges can be set to be, they can be verbal, so it could be a little text that shows up, but it can also be a picture. So if you have people who struggle a little bit with being able to read on the watch, maybe a picture of, I don't know, maybe a picture of a glass of water if you want them to hydrate, or a picture of food if you want them to remember their meal, that sort of thing. You can create those pretty easily. So next we just have a couple of use cases that I wanted to share with you. These are drawn from the photos are of course just stock photos because we are protecting the privacy of our users. But these are cases that we have in BoundaryCare being used sort of in the field. And so I mentioned the opportunities for recognizing seizure-like symptoms and the importance then of being able to get information to the right person. We've had a number of cases where parents are especially concerned about seizures that happen at night because the parents are asleep, right? So it's hard to get that information. And there are a couple of devices that can detect some rapid muscle motion. So that's what we're now able to do as well. But also just being able to look at heart rate and oxygen saturation. So again, heart rate tends to go up, O2 tends to go down. And doing some trend analysis, we can kind of narrow the profile for a given individual so that we can see what their seizures look like and begin to recognize them in real time. Then the alerts go out, but it's actually not so helpful in the middle of the night to have an alert go out that just dings softly on the phone. We've all slept through text messages coming in the middle of the night. So what we've done is we've developed a system that allows the alerts to be quite loud. They're sent as critical alerts so that even if the phone has been muted, the alert will override that and it'll still sound, and it will sound persistently. So it can go again and again until somebody wakes up and acknowledges it. That's been a real lifesaver for some of our customers. The next one, let's see. Yeah, so this is just the use in behavioral supports. I mentioned this problem of people dealing with outbursts, and I think it's not possible to eliminate them altogether. But it is possible to kind of get some advance warning of what's going on. And as people are starting to get tense, there too, the heart rate goes up and the oxygen levels tend to go down. There can be repetitive motion, which is another signal. So by doing some trend analysis over the first couple of weeks after the device has been activated, you can start to get an idea of what the profile is for that given individual and set your thresholds appropriately. And at that point, you can give a heads up to caregivers that something is about to blow, or some feedback directly to the individual. And there are other things that can be useful as well, just looking at the trend analysis where you can sort of map if you're recording when these incidents have occurred, and you look, everything is time-stamped in our web portal, and you might see that, oh, gee, these outbursts tend to happen, just before meal times. It's like, oh, okay, maybe there's something going on with blood sugar or hunger or something else. So it can be a useful tool in some surprising or unexpected ways.
Um,
And then
I, I
yep.
have a question. I was just curious about this as you were speaking and talking about getting all the settings and, taking some time to see how things work, how long does it typically take the average user to kind of get really up and running and familiar and have everything set up the way they want it and be used to how this works?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for a bunch of things, it's just like out of the box. You'll see in a later slide, the way that we deliver it, everything is pre-configured according to the initial configuration that we sort of work out with the individuals. So that's sort of the first best guess of what it is that you'd like to have alerts for. And some of it is really, very obvious. So the wandering, right? We know exactly what the perimeter is for what you need, or falls, all right? And that's pretty much on or off. You're either receiving alerts for falls or not. For some of these things that involve trend analysis, like the behavioral supports and seizure detection, it depends a little bit on how frequently these events occur. So what we would like to do is take a guess at some of the original or the initial settings, and then let it run for a couple of weeks and have people mark down when there has been, for example, an outburst or when there's been a seizure. And for the most part, a couple of weeks is sufficient unless the seizures are very, very rare or the outbursts are rare. So then we can go back over it and sort of look at those peaks and valleys to find out exactly what it was like for a given individual. So usually a couple of weeks, and then if the events are much rarer, then it'll take a little bit longer just because you do need to collect some data.
And then when you're talking about, making phone calls, can you block it from making phone calls or only allow it to call certain people?
So there are a couple of answers to that. One is that it's possible to block calling entirely. So we don't have that ability to filter so that only calls to certain individuals can be made, but we can block calling entirely, no incoming or outgoing calls. The other thing that we can do is it's possible for us to lock the device down even further, so we can put a special protective case on the device so that it actually cannot be, you can't make any adjustments on the screen. So normally it's possible on the screen to press a button if you want help and things like that. But we can also lock down the screen. And once the screen is locked down, then it's impossible to place a call. Then you could receive one with auto answer, but no calls could be placed at that point. So it's a pretty flexible system. And then as we learn about the needs of the individual, we can sort of guide people on what might be the best configuration for them. And then this is just the last use case that talks about fall detection and fall prevention. So together we consider those fall protection. And I mentioned a little bit about this before, that because we're able to look at so many other health metrics, we can help to determine why it is that people are falling. And this has to do with the kind of sort of study that we can do within the web portal. And in fact, I think what I'll do is like have you jump to the next slide and we'll look at the web portal, and I'll talk a little bit more about fall protection as an example. This is what the web portal looks like. It's a little bit more detailed than what you get in the handheld, just because there's more space typically on a computer screen. So this is showing all of the metrics that are turned on for a given individual. This is a screen where many metrics are turned on. You've got the map at the top, and you can see there's a perimeter around the home. And if people go outside that perimeter, then the alert is sounded. Below that is location history. So you can move that slider back and forth and see where people have been over the past 12 hours if that's useful. Some device information, then a lot of health metrics. Here in the web portal is also where you would set up those reminders that I mentioned, and it's also where you can set up the alert structure, who should receive the alerts when, how many people, you're doing the waterfall alerts, how many different people do you want it to go to, things like that. And then if you were to tap on any one of those tiles on the health metrics, or tap on the, click on the data history in the margin, you'll get what we see in the next slide, which is a beginning of a data history. So this is just showing for heart rate. So let's say you clicked on the heart rate tile. It's showing you the heart rate for the past hour or so. Like, well, that's great, and we get to see what's going on with the heart rate. But maybe an hour isn't really what you need. Maybe what you want is to see what heart rate has been doing over the past week, or maybe you want to see over the past month. And if there has been any change, if there have been really big swings. So you can display all of that data. And in fact, you can then start adding in other fields. So in addition to heart rate, you might turn on how many wandering events have there been? How many times has the person gone outside of a zone? How many times has what have the O2 readings been? What has the sleep quality been? And you end up with this really sort of thick description of the individual looking at various metrics, and they all show up as a kind of a table, and it's all time stamped. That's the great thing about it. So everything is there, and you look across a row and you're seeing what was happening at a given time of day. And this is where that trend analysis can be really useful. I was mentioning fall detection, fall prevention. So you say, I don't know, let's pick on Michelle. Let's say that Michelle had 4 or 5 falls over the past couple of weeks. Wow, what's going on? Michelle's falling all the time. And you run all of these metrics, and then you just kind of like look at them and look at the variations. The last fall occurred at on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. And look what was going on at the same time. Oh, her heart rate was a little bit low. I wonder what's going on there. Or her O2 was low. Maybe she was getting a little bit dizzy. Maybe it was before meal times. And again, maybe blood sugar plays some sort of a role. Maybe it happened after a night when her sleep quality was bad. And so you can start to look for repetitions of that sort that can lead you to have some very timely interventions and try to avoid having that kind of situation occur again. It's the same kind of thing then that we do that kind of trend analysis for some of the other problems that we're solving for, such as seizure-like symptoms and behavioral issues like outbursts. If you click down to the next one, the next slide, you just see what it looks like. It's a pretty simple solution. Really, the one way in which we do sort of try to follow Apple is just in the simplicity of its user interface. So even though you might recall, even though everything starts with an Apple Watch, it does become multi-platform once the data comes off, and you can read the data on any computer or on an iPhone, an Android phone, or a tablet. But we deliver this as a kit that is pre-configured. So we work with individuals to figure out what the starting point should be for the various settings, which features you want turned on, which ones you want turned off, what high heart rate should be, what sort of safe zones you would like created. Most of these we can change pretty easily later on, but at least we have an initial configuration. And then it arrives, and all you do is you take it out of the box, turn it on, connect it to the Wi-Fi network if you can, if there is one. Otherwise, it'll just connect to cell service. It does come with a kit iPhone, which can be used by caregivers, so that a phone can just be handed from one person to another. The kit iPhone doesn't need to be kept anywhere near the Apple Watch. They operate entirely independently. The watch has its own cell service, and so it can be used independently of the iPhone. And then other caregivers can be added to the group at no cost. You just send them a caregiver code, and they can put the app on their own phone, again, iPhone or Android phone, and then all of a sudden they're brought into the caregiving circle and they can help to provide that support.
So here's a question, if
Yeah.
somebody already has like the Apple Watch and phone, can you adapt those to be used with BoundaryCare? Can you have just upload the app or something like that?
Yeah, so we do have a consumer app that is available in the just in the App Store. So people can download BoundaryCare and then they set it up themselves. They put it on their phone, and then it will connect with their paired watch, and they can set it up and do their own settings. In many cases, it depends a little bit on how people are funding it. So the kits that we do are HIPAA compliant. And if something is being funded through Medicaid or something, then probably it would have to be the HIPAA compliant kit. And in that case, they would use the phone, or I mean, the watch that we have delivered, but they would just put the app on their phone, and that would remain HIPAA compliant. They wouldn't have to carry two phones. But otherwise, they can certainly do, they can add, sort of create it outside of that HIPAA compliant space, just downloading the app and running it that way. And yeah, so that works great too. The benefits, I think, are probably pretty clear. Again, BoundaryCare is one of the players in this space, but many of us have the same basic benefits that we're aiming for, right? That we want to be an extra set of eyes. You can't be on duty 24/7, and there are ways in which we can actually collect data that is not always visible. So even if you did have eyes on the individual, you wouldn't necessarily see these things. Gradually, in certain cases, the device can provide greater independence, partly because it means that you don't have to be present all of the time. And sometimes it just affords the individual a greater sense of security, knowing that that device is there, that they can reach out for help whenever they want to. And then for all parties, it provides some additional peace of mind. So those are really the great advantages of this kind of technology.
Do they have better battery life than other things like Apple? How often do they have to be charged?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the watch that you have, and it also depends on the settings that you have activated. So, like location monitoring requires a little bit more battery life than just heart rate monitoring, and so there's always a little bit of a trade-off there. And it depends also on the frequency. So we let you choose how often you would like to get an update. Do you need an update every couple of minutes? Are you okay waiting 10 minutes for an update? Are you, can you be even more patient than that? So that depends on the particular needs. But often the Apple Watch itself, sort of the standard Apple Watch, is good for some 18 to 20 hours. That duration can be limited a little bit if you're turning on many features and getting really frequent updates. So in some cases, we suggest that people use the meal times as a time to charge the watch. So if it's necessary for people to wear the watch at night, maybe that means that you charge it during dinner and during breakfast, something like that. We also offer a kit that uses the Apple Watch Ultra, which has much better battery life, and there you should expect to get more than 24 hours. But yeah, battery life is a crucial thing, right? And that's
Oh
the
yeah.
one thing that we need to be attentive to is the importance of keeping these things charged. Mostly what we see is that it's a question during those first couple of weeks of getting people into the habit. And once that habit forms, then it's okay. But as you see, what we're aiming for is something that is relatively simple to use. They can do many different things, but deliver that information simply. An individualized solution so that all of the features are turned on or off depending on the particular needs. Relatively affordable, and especially if you're in a place where waivers are available, then it's great to get that kind of support. It's scalable for larger organizations that are using BoundaryCare. They can view many people at once, and ultimately hoping that it empowers people.
Of course. So tell us, how can we get Medicaid to cover it? How much does it cost? And I assume there's going to be a where on earth do I get this thing?
Yeah, right. So where on earth do you get it? So it all depends on where people are, right? So Medicaid is administered state by state, and different states have different waiver provisions. But in many states, there are provisions for assistive tech. If you have a county case manager that you're working with or something like that, the first stop would be to inquire there to find out if this is something that can be covered by Medicaid in your state or by the waivers. The bottom line is that all of the devices, you say, where do we get it? They all end up coming directly from us, regardless of who is paying for it. There are a number of assistive tech vendors across the country who all also represent us, but when the order comes through, we'll be delivering it. And you can see all of the different capabilities and the options on boundarycare.com. So that provides the sort of ordering options for people who are ordering directly, and then some information for individuals who are working with AT, assistive tech vendors, or other providers. The kit itself, the standard kit, costs $649. So that comes, this is the HIPAA compliant version. We have a consumer version that is not HIPAA compliant, that is a little bit cheaper. It's just more expensive to run a HIPAA compliant program. So $649 plus an activation fee and shipping. And then there's a monthly fee. And for the HIPAA compliant version, that's $68 a month. That does include the cell service for both the iPhone and the watch. So no additional cell plan is needed. And then if you are looking at the consumer version, that's a little bit cheaper. And if you're looking at the downloadable version, so you just want the app and you're putting it on existing technology, it's actually relatively inexpensive. So that's $35 a month. You're providing the tech, but we just charge in our non-HIPAA compliant space a $35 a month charge for the monitoring service.
I'm trying to get it all. It's a HIPAA. Am I doing that right?
HIPAA. Yep, HIPAA compliant.
Compliant. Ooh, I spelled compliant way wrong there. But you know what I mean. All right, hopefully I've gotten that information correct. But Scott's information is all here. The website is here. It's hard to read on this screen,
Oh,
so
I
that's
see
why
that. Yeah.
I did put it in the chat box though. BoundaryCare.com is pretty easy. Scott@boundarycare.com. I've got just a couple more slides to wrap things up as you put your final questions for Scott into the chat that we can get back to. Consolidated Planning Group does webinars all throughout the week on all different kinds of topics that are hopefully very helpful to the families that we serve. Everything from how to plan for the future cost of care for your loved ones. We've done educational seminars, divorce topics, beneficiary designations. We have a great one called Government Benefits 101. That's one of my favorites. We always talk about residential communities and educational options. You can go to this link right here, which will take you to the events tab on our website, where you can register for the upcoming webinars and see what we've got on our calendar. We always send out the slides and the link to the recording. This is our team. Again, we are an independent firm located just outside of Houston, Texas. We serve families all across the U.S. We're members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors. And as you look at all the smiling faces on this screen, well, my husband with the big beard, he doesn't smile, and neither does Allison's husband. But all of the rest of us smile. And we would hate it if you were rude to us when we call to reach out to you to see if you have any more questions. So be nice. We will call you or email you to see if you have any questions going forward, or if you would like your free consultation. This will usually take about 30 to 45 minutes on Zoom. And we're going to get to know you and your family, give you a chance to pick an expert's brain. Ask us whatever you need to ask about financial planning and special needs planning. And then we'll go into how we work and what we charge and see if we would be a good fit for you. We would love to work with you and answer your questions. So you can use the QR code to sign up for your free consultation, or you can call us or email, or just wait for us to reach out to you. There are also links here to that YouTube channel that I've mentioned several times, our Instagram page, our podcast, in case you prefer to listen instead of watching these things, and our Facebook page. So you can reach out to us with any questions. You can reach out to Scott with any questions. And is that the number? Sometimes, there's 5 people making phone calls, so it might come from 281-690-1177. That's just one of the people who will be calling. But Estella, if you would like to reach out to us or call me directly, I will go ahead and put my number in the chat box. It's 281-407-4087. And my email is mmorris@cpgcares.com. .net. Sorry, cpgcares.net. So you can reach out to me directly if you have any questions or concerns, not if you're a stalker. All right, I don't see any more questions for our speaker. Scott, you have been so fantastic. Amy, I will see you on Sunday. Everybody, I hope you have a great week. Keep in touch. We are here for your comments, your concerns, your questions. And Scott, we really appreciate you so much for telling us about your company today. This has been fantastic.
Thanks so much.
All right, we will see you soon, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have a great day and goodbye.